free, wonderfully made. I am free, wonderfully made.
Hello from Rugusu Primary School in Ntumbiri in northern Kenya, which is full of bright, smiling faces and a lot of excitement for this week's Convex Conversation.
I am free, wonderfully made. I am free, wonderfully made.
The school nestles on the edge of Lewa Wildlife Conservancy, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and has around 70 pupils. I've travelled from London with half of Team 91. They've just met the other half of their team who've travelled up from Cape Town. They're here to run the famous Lewa Marathon and Half Marathon for conservation charity Tusk. 91 is an active global investment manager whose goal is to provide long-term investment returns to their clients, whilst making a positive difference to people and the planet. And here, Lewa's grasslands are home to lions, giraffe, zebra, buffalo, rhino, antelope, elephant, and many other savanna species, protected by the Conservancy and local communities. Beyond its boundaries, though, this part of Kenya is facing a horde of ecological problems, including rapidly diminishing natural resources. Widespread conservation awareness, therefore, is vital. Ephantus Mugo is Conservation Education Programme Controller for Lewa, and in fact was named Disney Conservation Hero in 2020. He provides these young, inquisitive minds with the tools and information to do better for the wildlife and the environment and help their communities thrive alongside the endangered species which share their land. Some of Africa's most threatened wildlife, including 15% of all Kenyan rhinos, more than 400 elephants, 11% of the global population of Grevy's zebra, lions, primates, hyenas, and more than 480 species of bird live here. And as you drive around, it's amazing how many of those you just spot. And Ephantus was key when 91 set up their Next Generation Conservation Programme with the charity Tusk to connect the children of their staff in the UK to young conservationists in Africa, a joint and very special learning programme. Ephantus, I'm absolutely delighted to meet you in what very much is your natural habitat at the school. Tell me a bit about this beautiful school and what you do.
Yes, welcome to Helen to Kenya and more so to Africa and Kenya. I run the Conservation Education Program, which is a program based in Lewa, a Lewa program that really focuses into communicating conservation to the communities. And more specifically, our focus is creating a generation that really values wildlife, appreciates its importance, and more important, a generation that will be able to take care of the environment in the future. It's a role that I've taken for more than 10 years on Lewa. When I joined Lewa in 2011, when my key responsibility was to set up the Conservation Education Center, a center that they never had in the beginning. And the idea was giving children or the communities an opportunity to really get exposed to issues on environment and wildlife that we have on Lewa, and more important, to have an opportunity to really see some issues that human beings have been contributing that affect the environment. So the center is based in the Conservancy. It's a center that has accommodation facility to be able to host those students that come from very far. And we have exploration exhibits that really help deliver various sessions that we'll be able to talk about later today. And also we give guided game drives when the students come to the Conservancy. So the program is more about engaging the students, and more so we do follow-up programs to the schools like Lugoso and other 22 schools around Lewa, where we have to visit them, give them some ideas on how to better their environment and support them with some ideas on conservation initiatives. But for them to implement this, we work with the teachers, and therefore we also need to, from time to time, bring teachers for training on the Conservancy. So this is really an overview of what we are engaged in doing. And I'm happy that is a role that I have done for the time I've been here until in 2020. That was exactly 10 years after working this in the Conservancy. I was named the Conservation Hero by Disney, which was really a very exciting law to have this recognition being given this recognition in the world and being among the 20 conservation heroes in that year. So it's something that I really appreciate, and today I stand also to coordinate other environmental education activities in the continent, being the International Zoo Educators Regional Representative for Africa.
Oh my goodness, Ephantus,
Yes.
I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's no wonder you're a conservation hero. There are so many questions that spring to mind. Can we start off maybe by you explaining to me some of the examples of the problems that you have here and how you demonstrate those problems to young people and local communities and show them how they need to fix them?
Our program was basically based on addressing the issues that relate to their challenges. Lewa borders pastoral communities on one part of the conservancy. Whereas the less part of the conservancy, we have small-scale farmers that really do agriculture. They grow crops. And it's important to mention also that Lewa sits in a semi-arid environment. So when you say growing of crops is not in a very high rainfall environment, is crops in an area that has a lot of challenging climate, low rainfall, is a dry area with very low rainfall, and therefore those farmers that try their crops, they try to do small-scale farming. And our work has been to help them realize that conservation of the environment is something that each one of us embrace or understand the challenges that face the environment and work towards addressing those issues, then they can be able to do that. And I would like to point out that for the pastoralists, the challenges has been low rainfall, which really affects their pasture. And our lessons has been helping them realize that their large number of livestock in a way have an impact to the environment. Land degradation is a big problem in this area. And this doubled with some communities maybe relying on the environment to cut down trees, to make charcoal for selling. And this is as a source of income because, again, livestock may not be giving them a lot of income. This also makes the challenge much bigger. So engaging the communities to realize that their impacts with the livestock, with cutting down trees, really have a negative impact on the rainfall patterns as well as the pasture for the livestock is one of the things we want the communities to learn, that they have a responsibility of stopping that or maybe reducing that. Otherwise, the environment may not be habitable tomorrow. The farmers, on the other side, as much as they are trying to try their agriculture in a low rainfall environment, we try to help them understand that growing of crops that are adapted to dry areas is one of the ways that they can try to grow some food for their families. But again, embracing some water conservation measures because they have to rely on water conservation in their farms is one of the things that would ensure that there is less competition for that resource that is very rare. This is because our impact, our support in the communities to give them water is one of those things that we are always trying to ensure that communities have access to water for drinking and where possible for agriculture. So those challenges face the farmers.
What about the wildlife challenges, Ephantus? How do you get across to the communities that they need to work hand in hand with the wildlife and that actually it's beneficial to them as well as obviously our planet?
Yes, I started with the agriculture and livestock because that's what really the communities rely on their livelihood, that how they see as something that gives them the direct income to feed their families. But our landscape setup is very different and unique to very many places in the world in that the pastoral communities interact freely with the wildlife. So as we are encouraging them to think about taking care of the environment, we know that the wildlife are sharing water points. The wildlife are sharing the habitats, the pasture with the livestock. sometimes communities would consider wildlife to be a threat that they are taking their resources. So our messaging has been on how they can coexist with the wildlife. And to some extent, we have been encouraging the communities out there to consider tourism initiatives and where they are able also to host visitors in their campsite and utilize wildlife in their land for income generation. The reason why we do that is that we cannot tell them to stop livestock production. We cannot tell them to get off the wildlife in their land. But if they coexist together, the community will have a double benefit of benefiting from livestock as well as wildlife. Sometimes conflicts exist where we have elephants breaking the fences or lions getting into their livestock. And through the Lewa's Wildlife Department, we are able to work with the communities to have the predator-proof bombers, teach them on how to do them, and the specifications on what would best work to keep the wildlife away from their livestock. So those are some of the efforts that we have to keep on engaging the communities. For the farmers, we have been trying the beekeeping projects as a deterrent to help the elephants not to close to the communities. And this is an idea that is still being tried out because it has been said that elephants do not really like bees. The buzzing and the sting of the bees, they know that the sting of the bee would make them very uncomfortable, and the sensitive part of their tusks, if it is stung, then elephants would avoid the bees.
So that's a good natural way of perhaps keeping them away.
Yes.
You were involved, Ephantus, I know, with 91 in London, who have kindly brought me out on what is not only my first visit to Kenya. I've never been to Africa. I'm not quite sure how I got to this grand old age, never having been here. But tell me about the 91 Next Generation Conservation Programme and what that involved.
The Next Generation project by 91 was a very unique opportunity for Lewa and more specifically for the children. The Conservation Education Program has been giving students on Lewa an opportunity to visit Lewa. We would handle them for a day and take them through the Conservancy, show them wildlife, and to learn about the environment. But when 91 came on board to give us an opportunity to expose these students to link up with the children from USA and UK and other places to interact and share various lessons from their landscape, it was really a life-changing moment for the students. It did not come very easy because, again, for the students, talking in English and continuously engaging in English was not very easy. So for the students, it was like their first time to have such an engagement virtually. Most of the times, visitors have been coming to learn, but engaging them one-to-one, and many times students participating in groups. But this time it was one student individually taking control of the screen to talk to the other students. So it gives students an opportunity to gain confidence, make friends, and the feedback that we got also was, it was amazing for them to realize when you talk about wildlife in Kenya, like elephants and animals that they're able to see across the fence, the students that were communicating in other continents really expressed a very different environment whereby they were not able to get such closer to the wildlife as they do here on Lewa. And one of the amazing things was students would really appreciate that they have a lot of wildlife resources on Lewa, whereas those other students, they can only access wildlife by visiting maybe zoos and other places, something that in Kenya we take for granted, that animals are just a few meters from the school. I
would imagine that the children here got a lot out of that program, but also the children in the UK would have also really, really benefited.
Definitely, yes. It was not like a one-day event. We had the children talking to each other, where students were learning from each other, but a very interesting opportunity to engage students at the education center, where I did take them around virtually at the education center, showing them through the various exhibits that we use to communicate conservation aspects, in our case, conservation would be the challenges we face in the environment, human-wildlife conflicts that communities face, issues to do with poaching challenges that really impact on the environment. Whereas when engaging that information with the children in the other continents, maybe to them, those are not the problems that they really come across. Then it was an amazing opportunity for me also to realize that the question they were asking was about if somebody had animals in their land, whether they would allow to kill the animal. Those are questions that really were very different from the questions you would get in a similar setup with the schools in this country. The questions I was getting from the students in UK and US are very different from the questions I would get from the students here. And many a times, some questions, for example, that I got was about whether people who have animals on their land would really be around to eat those animals, or whether there is any permission to own the animals in Kenya. Whereas in the case of Kenya, when wildlife is on your land, people always ask, why is it that the authority is not coming for the animals and taking them to the conservancy? Because wildlife is considered like a threat by the farmers, by the pastoralists, because if carnivores get to pastoralist land, they are likely to maybe kill their livestock. Whereas if elephants get to their farms, then they would eat on their crops. But then the engagement I had with the students from UK, then it was very unique that they would not think that wildlife can exist with the humans.
That's amazing. And you were saying that a year on,
yes,
some of the students still remember each other's names.
A year later, today's visit, which we earned together with you, as we are trying to find out what students can remember, it was amazing for me that students still able to remember their friends, that they hand one chat on the tablets. They're able to remember where they live and what their favorites or their hobbies, which is something, an attachment that I still feel if these children had an opportunity like to continuously engage, I think there's a lot the two can be continuously learn from each other on the various cultural differences that really exist.
You showed me in the Education Centre 2 exhibits, which I thought were really striking. We looked at the Conservancy land next to the land outside of the Conservancy, and you put some rainfall on it, so perhaps you can describe that to me. And also the carcass of a rhino. Can you just explain how you use those two exhibits to get the message across?
Yes, that's a visual which I designed as one of the ways that I would be able to communicate those hand topics that would explain to the students theoretically and bring them to a picture on the reality. And the model about a table with a degraded environment and a well-conserved environment was to help the children appreciate that a degraded environment has more challenges, while a conserved environment, there are so many benefits that one really gets. And you realize the table was a slope with vegetation on one side and no vegetation on the other side. And the actual creation of rainfall or making some rainfall fall on that table was to really help the learners to really look at how water behaves when it lands or when it falls on a degraded environment as compared to a place with a lot of vegetation. On the degraded environment, one of the things that you realize is that the water lands very fast, and it is an easy way to explain how soil erosion is a factor of a degraded environment. More soil is carried away in such an environment. And flooding is a problem we always complain about as communities. And flooding may be as a result of nothing pleasant in the environment to slow down the water. So people complain of flooding, people complain about soil erosion, and by extension, the soil is not good for agriculture or for pasture for the animals. So this is an image to show them that when you let the environment to run away because of soil erosion, then we have a very difficult environment for our agriculture or for the livestock. The well-conserved environment, there are still houses, there are people living there. The water falling on that environment does not go down very fast, and therefore it's easy to appreciate that when water falls on a well-conserved environment, then we are assured of intact soil, vegetation, of pasture, as well as water during the dry season. So that is one model that we really try to help the communities realize. And the most amazing thing that I always get from that model is when the students come here, the model, as you say, it shows a degraded environment and a well-conserved environment. When the students come here, they say that this is Lewa and this is community. I'd never tell them the two, but themselves they say this is Lewa and this is community, because actually they can pick this as a true picture of where they are coming from.
Well, it's the same thing with the rhino carcass, wasn't
Yes.
it? You were showing bullet holes
Yes.
in the rhino carcass, and that, I presume, is to enable you to talk about poaching.
Yes, many a times in the classroom setup, for example, in the lessons in science, we talk about some impacts humans have on the environment. Poaching is one of those elements that are mentioned in our natural, in our school curriculum. We talk about poaching as a problem. But again, from the class setup, how do you show poaching? From the communities, people may lean that as a story, may think that poaching was happening many years ago. But when you get the students in the conservancy and we are going out on the game drive, seeing rhinos and mention that poaching is the biggest threat to animals like elephants and rhinos, it still becomes a theory because they can see the animals and they cannot see any of those animals poached. When you get to the education center, we give them an example of an animal that was poached. The skeleton that you saw is a white rhino that was poached in 2013. The rhino was poached when it was pregnant. So it was expecting a calf. And when we look at the skeleton and see the 3 bullet holes, one on the skull, the other on the front leg, and the other one on the back leg, you realize how humans just would kill the animal, not because they're interested with meat, but just because they're interested with the horns. It really touches the students to really think that an animal which is the second largest land animal is being killed just because of the horns, and the rest of the body is left lying down. So it's amazing that really touches the children. But more so, we have a fetus below the skeleton of a rhino that was got after poaching. So when we went for postmortem, we were able to get that fetus, and deliberately I requested the vet to be allowed to carry that fetus, because it passes a message on how humans through poaching would affect various generations of rhinos. And a simple calculation that we always do there is that 2013, we lost that rhino, the skeleton that you saw, the rhino and the mother. But again, rhino calving interval is 3 years. Between 2013 and 2022, how many calves do you think we have missed if that rhino was alive?
I don't know.
Yes,
Tell me. I don't know.
You need to calculate. In 2013, if that calf was born, that in 2016 would get another calf. 2019 would get another calf. And today, in 2022, we'll be having the 4th calf.
It's very important to bring that to life, isn't it? When I can see that you're a very visual person,
Yes.
and I'm sure that really does resonate with the children. I'm curious to know, Ephantus, a bit about your home and what it was like growing up on the eastern side of Mount Kenya, because
Yes.
here you are at Lewa.
Yes.
I've only been here a few hours today, and in the first 10 minutes I saw Grevy's zebra, I saw rhinos, I saw an ostrich and a giraffe and 3 elephants in the distance. But you didn't grow up with lots of big wild animals where you were growing up, did you?
No, my experience is very different. I have not grown up in a wildlife-rich environment. And I've grown up in a coffee-growing part of the other side of Mount Kenya. We are on the northern part of Mount Kenya. And I've grown up on the eastern side of Mount Kenya, where we have good soils, we have good rainfall. We have grown up harvesting coffee and taking coffee to the factories.
Oh, you're my kind of man. I should have got you to
meet one. A very different environment from this place. But again, each place you live in has its own challenges. I grown up to an environment where we are farmers. We are just every day you are in the farm. I never had an opportunity to see any wildlife as I grew up. I would say the largest wild animal that I ever came across was a squirrel.
Like me.
And, this was because the squirrel would come to our farms to feed on the nuts. And in my primary school, and I would say primary school and high school, because I schooled on the same side of the mountain, I only had an opportunity to visit a conservation area once. And that is a park to the city, to Nairobi, which is our capital city. And it was a trip that we worked very hard in people's farm to raise money to get the opportunity to go for the trip. And at that time, I was around 10 years old. I was in grade 5. It is the first time that I was able to see some animals like zebras, buffaloes, and rhinos in Nairobi Animal Orphanage.
How did you feel when you saw them for the first time? Do you still remember that feeling?
It was really very unique, and definitely that is where I think the first feeling is you get so scared, because again, these are the animals you have never come across any other day. You feel so scared. You always told wild animals are dangerous, so it's not something that you want to get closer like you have always wanted with the cows. So I really got very scared. But really it was just once life opportunity in my high school. When I cleared high school, I'd never had an opportunity for another trip.
So where did your love of conservancy come from, Ephantus?
So after high school, I had an opportunity again to think of a course that I would pursue further. And one of the things that always I could feel like was working in a conservation area. I think the feeling the attachment that I got during that time was, I would wish to get another chance to even see wildlife more. It was a one-off opportunity, which never came again. And when I was thinking about my career and a choice of what to look for, I had to apply for a course in wildlife management. So I applied in one of the Kenyan universities, which I did an undergraduate course on wildlife management. And I don't regret that it is through the wildlife management course that I had an opportunity to even get closer to more wildlife, visit so many national parks in this country. And I was able to learn more about and work for the wildlife that I really loved. And as a wildlife management practitioner who was really qualified in the management of wildlife, something really happened. After clearing my university, after 4 years, I did not go to manage wildlife directly. I happened to land in a conservation education center, which was through my attachment. And from then, I started sharing the importance of conservation. So I became now an educator to talk about conservation. And that is how, as a conservationist who is trained to take care of wildlife, I moved now to communicating conservation. And since then, since my university, more than 20 years ago, I've just been doing conservation education.
Well, you can see it's clearly your passion. And I just wondered, how optimistic are you for the future generation? There we were today in one of the classrooms here at the primary school. The children are absolutely charming. How optimistic are you that they will carry on the legacy that conservationists like you have started? And how optimistic are you for the future of our natural world and the beautiful species that I've been lucky enough to see today?
There's a very positive future when we continue engaging the young generation. I'm very convinced that my 20 years have been able to impact on the environment is great. I'll be showing you a photo of my colleague in Lewa. I met last week. It's very interesting because she's a lady. She told me, Ephantus, I know you cannot remember me. You took me for a field trip when I was in grade 4. And now I just got an employment in Lewa. She told me that I took conservation as a career out of your trip that you took us to Olpeja. This was before I came to Lewa. Because before I came into Lewa and worked for an organization called Laikipodre Forum for 7 years. So that girl, I handled her while she was very tiny in grade 4. And she is showing me photos that she took during that trip. I have several guides working for Lewa that have met and told me, Ephantus, you took me out for a field trip in one of the Lewa supported schools that is in the western side of the Conservancy. And somebody told me, you took me for a trip while I was in the primary school, and now I am a guide on Lewa. And for the years I've worked, I've interacted with so many students, not just in Lewa, and even before coming to Lewa. And there are several people I know through the exposure I've given, really contributing positively towards making this world a better place. And the more we engage the younger generation, the more we have people who can think about the environment after us.
That's a very positive note to end on. You've been a fantastic guest. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being so generous. And please keep on doing what you're doing, because education is so important, isn't it?
Yes, I really appreciate for what 91 is doing, what Task is really doing to ensure that we continue collaborating in various aspects in the development of resources that really continues to communicate our responsibilities as humans to the environment. And I believe I do my part, you do my part, and the little thing each one of us does, we are going to change the world. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me. You've been listening to Ephantus Mugo, Conservation Education Programme Controller for the Lewa Conservancy in northern Kenya, whose passion for education is making a palpable difference and helping ensure that the good work Lewa and Tusk have done over the last few decades will continue through the younger generation. And my thanks as well to 91 for introducing us. Who knows where I'll be next week? It certainly won't be this gorgeous little primary school on the edge of Lewa, but I will be with another inspirational guest, so join me then.